My name is Bob Horner. I entered the United States Air Force in 1968, left the Air Force as a sergeant, and this is my story. So my family history with the military started when I was still in high school. My brother was drafted into the Army at the time when the Vietnam War was going on. And he was sent off to Vietnam, had an M16 machine gun, was in the trenches in Vietnam. And even at that time, even before I was in the military, I was never really a fan of that going into that war. Never saw any sense in why we were involved in it. But when I got out of high school, I knew that I wasn't slated for multiple reasons to go into college and into follow on a professional life for multiple reasons. So, but I did choose, and when I graduated from high school in 1968, to go into the military. And so I looked at the different branches of the service. I didn't want to have anything to do with the Army because I knew I'd probably be sent over to Vietnam, and I was not a supporter of the war. I certainly didn't want to get into the Marine Corps and be a big hero because it just wasn't for me. I really didn't want to get into the Navy because I'd be on some ship in the middle of the ocean, and I didn't want to get in the Coast Guard on a smaller ship in the middle of the ocean bouncing up and down. So that left me with going into the Air Force, which was, to me, was a great place for me. So that's shortly after I graduated from high school, I went off to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, where most of the Air Force basic training is involved. Was there for a few months and then got into aircraft maintenance, where I went to Griffith Air Force Base in northern Texas for my basic aircraft maintenance schools. After that, I was assigned to Mather Air Force Base outside Sacramento, California. And there we maintained about 120 aircraft that did all the training for the navigators and across the entire Air Force. So I was always pretty good mechanically and did pretty well in that. So I was there for about a year and a half, and then I was deployed to Utapao, Thailand. Now, the aircraft that I was particularly trained on shortly before I got there were given to the Vietnamese airport, and they were all destroyed within a short period of time. So I guess they didn't quite know what to do with me. So I got into they call it transit maintenance area of the business, where I worked on B-52s, KC-135s, among other things, including this is where all the bombers were that were taking off day in and day out, bombing North Vietnam. One of my assignments there was working with a team that was picking up B-52 drag chutes, sometimes in the middle of the monsoon seasons, just loaded up with rain in the monsoon. So you can just imagine the weight of these things, where it took 3 or 4 of us to load these things up and take them off to the chute shop. The good thing about being in the Air Force during that particular time, at least I had a warm bed to sleep in, had clean clothes, and worked with really a bunch of really good guys. When my one-year assignment was up, I was reassigned at my request to go back to Mather Air Force Base, where I still had a lot of civilian friends there, and finished up my commitment of 4 years. There I still stay in touch with some of my friends outside Sacramento. It was just a really a good assignment if you're going to be in the military. Like I said, I was really not a fan of the Vietnam War, and I'm still not a fan of many of the wars this country is getting involved in today. Not only do we lose so many servicemen in these actions, but I also think of all of the Vietnamese that have lost their lives, all the people in the Middle East that lives have been destroyed the way I look at it, for no real reason, which I think is very unfortunate. One of the things I have learned now after I've retired a few years ago is that I've learned to really appreciate my military life experience even more today than I did when I was in it. I know, looking back at it, I really gained a lot of self-confidence. It got me out of my small town in Western New York, saw many cities around the country, met a lot of people, and without those experiences, I would have just stayed probably back in my hometown of Jamestown, New York. So for that, I am very grateful. But now, since I've retired, I do spend a fair amount of time volunteering at the VA facilities and doing a lot of different work out there, still do. and got to know many of the people in all the different organizations over there, and was recently given an award for volunteering out there from the Secretary of the VA, Dennis McDonnell, and which I'm very proud of. So I still am involved with the VA and continue to do that as often as I can. The long-term effects of these wars that we get into, they don't leave these people's lives when they get discharged. I see this in the veterans that I support out at the VA day in and day out, not only physically, but obviously mentally, emotionally. And it's just tragic of what one we do, some of it we have to do, but our politicians in Washington really don't take that into account when we look like heroes going on around the world, creating these wars that I think many of them are senseless and have no virtual benefit in the long term.